Well, the Sixers have their Daryl Morey replacement as Mike Gansey from the Cleveland Cavaliers has been tasked with taking over as president of basketball operations for the team. Gansey was the GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers under Kobe Altman, who was kind of the architect of that team. And here's the thing. I could sit here and I could tell you what this move might mean for the Sixers and dissect every move that the Cavs made. And pretty much every Sixers insider or everybody that covers the team will be doing that because any Sixers news, they have to cover it. This is throwing absolutely no shade. I could do that, and I could tell you at the end of the day, oh, this is a good move, or this isn't a great move. This guy should have been high. Jameer Nelson should have been high. Nobody has a fucking clue. Because this is essentially the equivalent of, let's say, the Orlando Magic hired Elton Brand as their president of basketball operations. And they said, hey, GM of the Sixers, Elton Brand, is taking over. And you would have sat there and went like, yeah, okay, but like how many moves did he make? Even though he's the GM, you looked at Daryl Morey as the guy who actually building the team. It was Daryl Morey's team. Same thing in baseball. You've got Dave Dombrowski, who's the president of baseball operations. Preston Mattingly is actually the GM, but you look at Dave Dombrowski and he's making the moves. So when you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, you look at the team that was built, you could look at all the moves that they've recently made to become a contender, whether it be bringing in Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen. You could look at the James Harden trade. You could look at all of that. The free agent signings of like a Max Strus. At the end of the day, you have no idea how many of those were influenced by Gansey and how many of those were his boss. How many of those were just Gansey getting coffee and, giving his opinion every now and then. I don't mean to be like insulting to him, but I think we've gotten to the point in sports where it's no longer looked at as like the GM is the guy making the shots. It's these presidents, the president of baseball ops, the president of basketball ops. So when I look at this move, I have no idea. I think the bigger surprise for me, though, was the fact that it came down to Mike Gansey and Jameer Nelson. And a guy that I just mentioned, Elton Brand, wasn't even mentioned. He wasn't even in the conversation, even though he was the GM of the team. And the reason why it's so surprising is twofold. One is the fact that he was the GM of the team, but also the fact that he had the same career path as Jameer Nelson. He was the GM of the Blue Coats. And then he rose to becoming the GM of the Sixers pretty quickly, mind you. But to look over that for Jameer Nelson, who is the GM of the Blue Coats, and to go, okay, like that guy might end up being the president of basketball operations, that is surprising to me. I'm not crying for Elton Brand. If Elton Brand left the organization, I wouldn't be like, damn, they lost a good one. I think Elton Brand probably would be a little surprised and pissed off because of what I just mentioned. Then I think that the people making the decisions, i.e. Bob Myers, the guy who built the Golden State Warriors dynasty, I think he would look in the moves that Elton Brand did end up making when they didn't have Daryl Morey, and they go like, look, man, you traded an unprotected Heat pick for Tobias Harris. When you did that, you had to sign Tobias Harris, but then you let some Jimmy Butler guy go, and then you used that money, and you signed Al Horford. And you kind of blew up a team that was by far the closest that this organization has gotten to a championship since 2001. That being, the 2018 team? The team that lost to Kawhi on the shot. So I think when you look at Elton Brand, I was surprised he wasn't mentioned, but I'm also surprised that I guess he's still here. Because at this point, what is his ceiling? Where does he go from here? If he's not even in the conversation to be president of basketball ops, is he just content with being the GM? I guess he's going to have to be, because he's going to have to work pretty closely with Mike Gansey if he ends up staying. But that move was a little surprising. The fact that this whole thing, though, went under the Bob Myers eye, that to me is the most hopeful thing. Because, again, at the end of the day, no one has any clue of how involved Mike Gansey was on these big decisions that the Cavs made to ultimately become contenders. But the fact that Bob Myers, who built that dynasty in Golden State, he knows what he's doing. The fact that he was the one who tabbed Mike Gansey, that gives me hope. Look, this is a huge hiring for the Sixers. And it's one that they have to get right. Because it's a team that is locked into a lot of big contracts with Paul George, with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey is going to be up for a super max. They got to get him locked up, which they will. But it's a team that doesn't have a lot of wiggle room, and they need a guy that will be able to find these diamonds in the rough and find these key pieces that you can turn into a winner. You know, when you look at the Knicks, and I brought this up plenty of times, but the most frustrating part to me about the Knicks build that Worldwide West did was the fact that they were able to pluck guys like a Mitchell Robinson, to pluck stealing a Josh Hart and turning him into a starter when he was a bench player primarily in New Orleans. Then you end up trading for Jose Alvarado. You know, you basically say, fuck them picks with Mikal Bridges, and everyone's like, oh my God, all those picks. Well, the Knicks are good. Those picks are going to end up being trash. They're going to end up being late first-round picks, which usually suck. They usually end up being Euro stashes because the college kids aren't very good. So it's like, all right, I'll take a Euro stash and hope to God he becomes something. But, like, that's the mindset you kind of have to have when you're a contender. But the Knicks were able to do that because they were able to find key contributors. Like Landry Shamet is on the scrap heap. He's playing for the Westchester Knicks of the G League. And they grab him, they bring him up, and boom, he's like draining threes. Like he's a rookie again. You need to do that. Same thing with Oklahoma City. Like Oklahoma City ended up getting 2 complete scrap heap grabs from the Sixers. Oh, and then by the way, they end up trading for Jared McCain, who I know Daryl Morey had to do a company line and say, oh, we think we sold high on him. The reality was Jared McCain this year was not being used by the team, and the Thunder did not, but the Sixers did not sell high on him. They sold low on him because he wasn't playing big minutes. And if he were, he would have been worth more than a lot. I can't talk right now. Smash thumbs down because I'm having a stroke in front of you. He would have been worth a lot more than one first-round pick that is like the 22nd overall pick that the Sixers clearly didn't want. They thought they'd be able to turn that into a player, and they didn't. So you need to find guys like that because when it comes to winning basketball and when you look at the teams that routinely are contenders, they were able to find the scrap heap gems and turn them into something. And that, I think, is going to be the hardest part of building the Philadelphia 76ers into a really, really true contender. And not just the 4th seed that people go, oh, nobody wants to play them when they're healthy and blah, blah, blah. Look, they have really good building pieces. I think Paul George, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, I think those 4 right there are really, really good. You bring back Kelly Oubre, okay. Like, I like their starting 5. Their bench is trash. Their bench is not good. So I think that's what is really going to be important when it comes to the future of the Philadelphia 76ers and with this hiring. Talent evaluation. He needs to basically become the basketball version of Billy Bean, about how Billy Bean would be able to find these guys that were cast off and build this island of misfit toys because he had to. Well, right now, with the Sixers being in kind of cap hell, that's what they have to do. I don't want to say they're in a situation where they can't win because I think they can. They just need to make the right pieces, the right moves, and find the right pieces to do so. Hopefully, Gansey can be that. Now, that's the private. What do you guys think of the hiring? Subscribe, unsubscribe. I couldn't even blame you at this point. This video went off the rails real quick. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm just gonna go. It's not getting any better.
Was this the offseason from hell for the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, if you're an Eagles fan, I'm sure you're watching this and you're going like, no way, bro. Come on. Let's really think about what this offseason has been. This was prompted by the fact that the coordinators talked today for the first time, including Sean Mannion, and that had me thinking about how this offseason has been a disaster for the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's start out with that. Let's start out with Sean Mannion, okay? The Eagles have an offense right now, as it stands, with Jalen Hurts, with Devontae Smith, with Dallas Goedert, with A.J. Brown, okay, with Saquon Barkley, with, on paper, a pretty good offensive line. They couldn't get a coordinator. Every coordinator they wanted, every coordinator that was reportedly on their short list, whether it be Mike McDaniel, whether it be Arthur Smith, whether it be Brian Dable, all of them said no. And I don't think it was because of Jalen Hurts. I know that that's going to be a popular rhetoric, and that was brought up when these candidates were picking places like Tennessee over Philly. It was like, oh, they don't want to work with, with Jalen Hurts. Maybe for one or two that's the case. I don't know. I think it has way more to do with they don't want to work with Nick Sirianni. But because of the fact that Nick Sirianni is so unlikable around the NFL to a lot of NFL people, because of the fact, I think more importantly, that he wants his grubby fingers all over the offense, I keep bringing it up, until I'm proven otherwise, until I'm proven wrong. Every time that this dude touches the offense, looks like last season's. Whether it be year one, whether it be Brian Johnson, whether it be last year with Patullo, it looks like last season's predictability. That is on Nick Sirianni, okay? So because of that, because you're going to have to work with a guy that is going to be on a little bit of a power trip, I think that prompted people to look elsewhere. That led the Philadelphia Eagles to have to pivot and go to their options C, D, E, F. And that led them to Sean Mannion, who has never called plays before, who is a first-time coordinator. And if it wasn't for the fact that he's coming from another organization, you'd be going, oh my God, this is Kevin Patullo and Brian Johnson all over again. Because the only difference is Kevin Patullo and Brian Johnson were promoted from within, and Sean Mannion was hired from outside. But there is no doubt in my mind that Nick Sirianni, smartest guy in the room, is going to pull him aside and go, hey, I won a Super Bowl. I know what I'm doing. Let's just do nothing but go routes. Let's do a dig. Who doesn't dig? I dig digs. I have a t-shirt that says I dig digs. Love a dig route. Let's actually, instead of being like an innovative offense, let's be the most predictable offense possible. No doubt in my mind. Because once again, I've seen it now 3 times. Guy just rode 2 coordinators to a Super Bowl, but now they're stuck with him. So that was really the first domino to fall. The second, I think, is really impactful is the fact that you had the one guy, the one coach I don't think you could have lost leave because he didn't want to work with Nick Sirianni, being Jeff Stoutland. So now, for the first time in legitimately your entire starting line's offensive line career, they're working with another offensive line coach. Maybe he's great. Maybe he is the bee's knees, okay? But we've been very fortunate in this city. I am 37, and for most of my lifetime, the offensive line coaches have been Juan Castillo, Howard Mudd, and Jeff Stoutland. I mean, that is a Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer. It is incredible. And by the way, it mirrors the left tackle situation of the Eagles going from like Trey Thomas to Jason Peters and now to Jordan Mailata. Like it is unbelievable when you really think about it. But Nick Sirianni pissed him off so much that he went, no, I'm good. And I think this is important to remember too. A couple of years ago, he was thinking about leaving Philly for Alabama. And it was a similar situation. In my mind. Like it was a similar situation of like, I don't want to work with this meathead. But he was talked out of it. He came back. Okay, they went to Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. But you pissed him off by taking away the run game stuff. And he said, I don't need this shit. And who could blame him? But now, as you usher in an era where you're going to need to rebuild that offensive line, Lane Johnson has got how many years left? Landon Dickerson's already talking about retirement. Jordan Mailata, same thing. It's not like Cam Jurgens was good last year. I think a lot of people, and myself included, think he was just injured and, he'll bounce back. But still, and Tyler Steen was horrible. And now you have to usher in a new offensive line era in Philly in the next couple of years without the guru. Yeah, I don't like that. All right, let's look at that offensive line. Wasn't really touched. I mean, they brought back Fred Johnson. Cool. But they're just going to run it back, which is fine, except for the fact that, like, your right guard situation still sucks. You weren't able to address in the draft. You weren't able to get future starters. You weren't able to get Lane Johnson's replacement because of the fact that you have not fixed the relationship between A.J. Brown and the organization, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts hasn't fixed the relationship. Not like we haven't seen this before. We saw Donovan McNabb piss off T.O. to the point where T.O. was a dick. And I've said this repeatedly. A.J. Brown is not T.O. A.J. Brown is not going to be doing sit-ups in his parking lot. A.J. Brown is not going to be throwing a hissy fit on the sidelines. And A.J. Brown's probably not going to be on the sidelines for the Eagles. Unfortunately, I think that's stupid. But A.J. Brown will conduct himself as a professional. He no longer fucks with Jalen Hurts. That is on Jalen Hurts. Like, Jalen Hurts has to repair that relationship, and it's not happening. And it should have happened. Like, Nick Sirianni, players coach, should have sat these two in a room and be like, guys, you're a Hall of Famer. You're a franchise quarterback. Let's figure this out. Didn't happen. And I go back to, like, I think it was a situation of last year. Everybody was frustrated about what was going on. So tensions built. But the fact that the tensions weren't fixed by the organization led them to a situation where now you need to spend your first round pick on a wide receiver, which was not an issue before. This is a team that has holes. They still don't have another starting safety. As I said, the right guard situation's blah. They need a future a future right tackle. I'm sorry. Like, this team had holes. And instead of filling up one of those holes, maybe getting a pass rusher, no, you didn't do that because you created an issue by not fixing it. You opened up a situation where now we need to spend a first round pick on Malachi Lemon. Hope he's great. Sure, he'll be great. Now, you look at the moves that they did make, okay? And I brought this up on a couple of my A.J. Brown videos where, I kept repeating over and over again, like, it doesn't make football sense to trade him. I stand by that. Like, I don't think it makes a lick of football sense to trade A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. He is still productive. And the Eagles will point to, oh my God, we got Dontavian Wicks. Guys, we got Dontavian Wicks. Who the fuck heard of Dontavian Wicks before the Eagles traded for him? Show of hands. I'll wait. The guy had like 330 yards last year. If he triples his production, that would be considered a down year for A.J. Brown. Let that sink in. Knocking at the door. If the man triples his production from last year, it would be considered a down year for the guy that you're trading. Oh, by the way, you're now going to trade and take a $20 million cap hit to do so. You look, if you get a future first round pick in 2028, fine. That first round pick is likely to be late in the draft. It's still a first round pick. Okay, I get it. Maybe you can use that to trade up. The one move I liked that they made was Jonathan Grenard. Like, you I think, fixed up your pass rush. So, like, okay, cool. I like that a lot. But this was a situation where, like, you look at their entire offseason, and it hasn't been great. And my biggest concern is the Sean Mannion hire. But everything around the Sean Mannion hire, I don't think has been great. The moves that I like are like Jonathan Grenard. I like bringing back Fred Johnson. Other than that, no, I'm sorry. I can't get pumped about Dontavian Wicks. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and pretend that I was a Dontavian Wicks, stan, as the kids say. Like, I had no idea who a Dontavian Wicks is, and my guess is like 99% of you also had no idea. And what concerns me is Dontavian Wicks is coming from a team that had a decent quarterback in Jordan Love, and also needed production from their wide receivers. They don't have a number one. They took Matthew Golden. He wasn't very good last year, and he couldn't produce. But I'm supposed to be all Dontavian Wicksed up? I'm supposed to get pumped about this guy? As if they just traded for A.J. Brown? As if they're not replacing A.J. Brown and they're trying to paint this picture that Dontavian Wicks is like A.J. Brown 2.0? No, I've fallen for that for the Sixers before when they traded Jimmy Butler for Josh Richardson. I fell for that. I'm not doing it again. Another move that I liked, by the way, that I want to bring up is I like the fact that they took Eli Stowers. At least they got their future tight end. And by bringing back Dallas Goedert, it will be easier on Eli Stowers because, as I brought up, and I'll put it up there, as I brought up with my interview with Andrew DeCecco, a lot of times rookie tight ends fail to really produce in their rookie year because they spend a lot of it, if they're a pass-catching tight end, they spend a lot of it trying to learn blocking schemes because they're just not very good blockers. They're not required to do it a lot in college. They need to learn it in the NFL. So if you look, historically speaking, at a lot of the really, really good pass-catching tight ends, if you look at their first year, it wasn't very good. So I like the fact that they brought back Dallas Goedert, and they're not just going to be relying heavily on a rookie tight end, and he'll be able to at least learn from Dallas Goedert, and then you can let Dallas Goedert go. But a lot of the moves they made were like the Rick Wollens, like, okay, we've seen moves like that before, where we're going to take a vet and we're going to hope that it's a bounce back year. And look, maybe it happens. I hope obviously it does, but I'm not really crushing them too much on not getting involved heavily in the free agent market. They need to pay these guys, and that's, I guess, the cross that you bear when you hit on these draft picks and they hit on those draft picks big time, you're going to have to pay Cooper DeJean. You're going to have to pay Quinyon Mitchell. You're going to have to pay a Nolan Smith. You're going to have to pay a Jalen Carter. Like, I get it. So you have to kind of go bargain bin hunting. But it's still concerning to me that the moves that they made, I mean, we're now in May, and I expect them to make more. But yeah, I mean, there are issues on this team. And I think when you package everything together, like, it's a death by 1,000 cut situation. It's not like one move was, oh my God, the death nail. But when you package that you got spurned by how many potential offensive coordinators that you wanted, you lose your offensive line coach. You're sticking with your head coach, who every time things go bad, he has no idea how to fix it. Your quarterback isn't going to your star wide receiver's wedding. That's just a bad look. I don't care what you say. That's a bad look. But the star wide receiver is likely to be traded by June 1st. Yeah. To me, this is the offseason from hell. Because this team was a Super Bowl champion 2 years ago. And, well, shit, I mean, a year ago, we were like reigning Super Bowl champs. And we saw 2023 2.0. And the big difference, and I brought this up, in a couple of videos when the train started falling the tracks, the big difference is in 2023, they didn't have a clue on what to do offensively or defensively. Last year, they had a clue on what to do defensively because they had Vic Fangio, and I didn't even bring that up. Vic Fangio is talking about retiring. Now, look, he came out and he's like, I probably didn't think about it. I got, 2 good years left. I had heard that it was like basically down to a day before the announcement was made. He was still contemplating whether or not he was going to hang him up. And when you've got a situation where potential OCs won't come to Philly, where the legendary offensive line coach is like, fuck this, I don't need this place anymore. And then you've got a situation where your defensive coordinator, who really carried the team last year, Jesus, J-Roll, my dog popped over to say hi. When the offense was lost and the defense was carrying the team, when he's thinking about retiring, because he doesn't really need this anymore. This is going to be a big year for Nick Sirianni. Is he fully able to take a step back and go like, all right, I'm hands off. And I'm going to let this Sean Mannion guy, I'm going to let him do his thing. I'm going to legitimately let him build an offense in his vision. And I'm not going to meddle. And I'm not going to just, tinker and all that. And really, when I say meddle, I'm not going to put my complete stamp on the offense, which is going to lead it to being predictable, where you're sitting there going, how the hell is this loaded offense barely scraping by to get 17 points? Am I going to do that, or am I going to do what I always do? And if he does that, and if he meddles, and if he does everything I just said, then he'll get fired. But this goes back to, like, they're in between a rock and a hard place because of the fact that the guy did win the Super Bowl, and when you look at it, I don't think he did. I think he, as I said earlier, I think he rode 2 great coordinators to a Super Bowl win, but now they're stuck with him because he has that tag as Super Bowl champion head coach, when in reality, I don't think he's very good. I've never thought he was very good. I think that the guy lives and dies by his coordinators, and other than that, you're looking at a situation where the Eagles last year punted a full year because they didn't want to embarrass the Nick Sirianni coaching tree by firing the OC mid-season, and then they had to replace him, and they thought, oh, this will be cake because we're the Eagles. We're a loaded team. We got a great offense. Who wouldn't want to work here? And everyone was like, yeah, I'm good. That's a bad look. That's a really, really bad look. None of this is to say the Eagles can't be in the Super Bowl next year and win it. The Eagles still have a very, very good football team. But when you look at the offseason, this was rough to watch. And I know everybody's all Malachi lemoned up, and damn it if I haven't seen a billion. Why is Philly calling me? Philly? All confused and shit. Oh, it's adorable. That's great. While I was watching it, I couldn't help but think the Eagles they created their own problem. And they had now an opening at wide receiver that they didn't have before. And they have it because they couldn't fix something that seemed to be, you're under contract, get in a room, kumbaya it out. Instead, it was like, yeah, we'll take a $20 million cap hit and we'll get a first round pick in 2028, maybe. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think out there. Am I being too harsh? As far as comments go, I'm only going to respond to channel members, so become a channel member, support the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this, smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. Ultimately, subscribing is cool. I'm going to go now. But hey, as always, go Birds.
Trea Turner doesn't suck. You're just stuck in 2023. And this is a common problem I find in Philadelphia sports, where we just go with our first impression. I had a teacher in high school talk about how important it was to make a good first impression, that everybody remembers the first impression of somebody. And it's really tough to change that first impression. And I feel like in Philadelphia, man, we buy into the first impression like you would not believe. Because if you come here and you are a high-priced free agent, if you are getting paid a lot of money, you don't necessarily have to perform immediately like a superstar, but you can't suck. You can't come out the gates slow. You can't struggle. You can't look like damn near a replacement player. And when you do, you are stuck with that tab for your entire Philadelphia career with some fans. Not all of them, but some. Because even when you prove those fans wrong, and even when you revert back to your natural form, i.e. being a really, really, really good player deserving of said contract, there is that little monster inside of Philadelphia sports that is waiting to come out. That is waiting to yell and scream and say, I told you so, he sucked. And I saw it last year, and I've talked about this a little bit on my channel, but I was at a game a year ago where it's the ninth inning, Phillies are trying to come back. They ended up coming back. Trea Turner gets a base hit, and the guy in front of me goes, look, he did something. And look, the crowd's going wild, so you can't really hear, but I loudly said, he's leading the league in hits. But that's a 2023 fan. That's a guy that is just, he spent an entire year of Trea Turner as a Philly going, this dude sucks. This dude can't play baseball. This dude is horrible. This dude never contributes. And even when he was proven wrong in 2024 and 2025, that fan will revert back to, look, he did something. The surprise of, oh my God, Trea Turner did something. And we're right back to it. After a very, very strong 2024 and a 2025 season that saw him lead the NL, win the batting title, we are back to the fans that are showing themselves. They're telling on themselves by living in 2023, by showing that I am the fan who cannot move on. I am the fan that will not move on from my initial reaction. And this goes for all types. This goes for like the false prophet, the Mike Scotts, the Harrison Baders. How many fans out there wanted to re-sign Harrison Bader? Because when he came over in that trade, he looked like an MVP. Not an all-star. He played at an MVP level. He was incredible. Now, he came over for his defensive purposes. But what he added on the bat, which nobody really expected, and nobody in Philly is watching Twins baseball, so he comes over, you know the name, you might know his career path, bouncing around a little bit, being on one-year deals, but you don't really watch Harrison Bader too much. Your initial impression of Harrison Bader was, wow, this guy's a really, really, really good player. We don't want to let this guy leave. Oh my God, how can the Phillies do that? He's hitting like $150. He signed a 2-year deal with San Francisco that they're immediately regretting. But the thing with Harrison Bader is he adds the defense. So even when he struggles at the plate, that's really not his calling card. His calling card is he is a defensive player. Fine, whatever. Whatever you get at the plate is good. But like, let's go to the Mike Scott thing. Mike Scott comes over. Nobody in Philadelphia was dialed into Clippers basketball and the career path of Mike Scott. He's the throw-in. You're excited about Tobias Harris. You're not excited about Mike Scott. Boban's an interesting character, but Mike Scott's like oh yeah, him. I mean, he's even got the generic name. And then all of a sudden he came alive in the playoffs, and we got to re-sign Mike Scott, the Mike Scott hive. And that's the last time we heard of Mike Scott, because while the Sixers re-signed him, he wasn't very good. He went back to what he naturally is, which is a bench player and really nothing more than that. My point of this video is, it is so amazing to me how quick we are to go, this dude is not good. Because our initial impression of a player sticks with us as a fan base and we cannot change. If we initially are excited about you but you don't perform, oh my God, that's it. You're probably not going to perform for the rest of your career. And it works conversely. It doesn't matter how long the career goes. Look how many people are still willing to give Aaron Nola a chance. Now, look, I have an Aaron Nola jersey. I was all Aaron Nola'd up when he got drafted. I went down to Reading. I wanted to watch him pitch. I went to Lehigh Valley to watch his first start as an Iron Pig. Like, I was so locked into Aaron Nola. But eventually, after the up and down years, I gave up. And I went, I can't do this anymore. On the flip side, there are fans out there that are like, they're still clinging to the 2018 version of Aaron Nola, not realizing that was 8 years ago. They're still clinging to this idea that he is an ace when he's not. So the idea that all of a sudden, because Trea Turner is off to a very, very slow start, where he's hitting like, I think, 221 on the season, the idea that he is going to stick to hitting 221 all year is ridiculous. Yet you have fans out there that have this PTSD from 2023 that are now claiming that, you know, he's horrible, he's the worst shortstop in the major leagues. He's still on pace for like 30 stolen bases and 25 home runs, by the way, but no. Don't let the narrative get into a good sports radio rant. So let's just get better as a fan base, because it's kind of laughable to me when I see fans out there ripping Trea Turner apart, not realizing that baseball is a long season. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, haven't we evolved? And apparently we haven't. And hey, that's on me for thinking that as a fan base we have evolved, when in reality there's always going to be like the hoagie mouths out there that just want to scream and yell and rant. And it seems like their frontal cortex never quite developed. But Trea Turner's a good baseball player. He will revert back to what his baseball card says, which is he's a really good baseball player. Is he going to win the batting title this year? Hey, probably not. I'm sure if I told 2023 Hoagie Mouth in the 330 section that Trea Turner would win a batting title for the Phillies, he'd be like, there's no chance. No way. He sucks. Bust. Contract's horrible. How many more years do we have left? It's like, all right, bud. All right. Because at the end of the day, some fans are just never, ever going to change their minds, because that initial and first impression is so utterly important. How many fans get fooled out there by the initial first impression of a guy that sucks, where they go, oh my God, this guy's great. And he shows himself in about 2 months. Trea Turner will be fine. The Phillies will be fine, believe it or not. I think the Phillies would have been fine had they kept Rob Thompson. But they fired him, fine. As I said in my video that I made for that, I'm not crying about it. They move on. They'll still make the playoffs. They're a playoff team. They have to worry about pitching. Their worry is not Trea Turner right now. It's just not. Now, as a part of the video, I ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this. Smash that thumbs down. But if you thought it sucked, become a channel member. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, because I'm only here to respond to channel members. So support the channel. Become a channel member. That'd be cool of you guys. Go Phillies. The Phillies won yesterday. The Phillies won again today. That is 2 in a row. If they win tomorrow, that is called a winning streak. It has happened before. Now, today's win was primarily because of another stellar pitching performance from Christopher Sanchez, who really has solidified himself as the best pitcher in probably all of baseball. And it's something that the Phillies desperately need, because when you look at their rotation right now, Andrew Painter is giving them what he can, but he's a rookie, and you shouldn't expect anything more than rookie numbers from him, and that's what you're getting. Whereas Jesus Luzardo and Aaron Nola are two high-priced problems that you don't know what you're getting. Now, I think with Jesus Luzardo, it's like, okay, we can identify pretty early on if he has his good stuff or not. With Nola, you don't. Now, Nola pitched really well last night. Phillies get the W, but that's not really what I want to talk about. They're doing it again. The Phillies are doing it again. They put Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. And while the very, very small sample size of 2 games will tell you, oh my God, it worked. It's 2 games. I mean, they're winning and everybody's hitting, and Trea Turner hit a home run. My problem isn't moving Trea Turner back to the 2-hole. My problem is solely based on moving Kyle Schwarber, your 50-plus home run hitter, into the leadoff spot, and the next level idiocracy that is. I will die on this hill. And people can point to the Phillies' record with him in the leadoff spot as if they're not a good baseball team. They can point to, oh my God, he's happy. Yes, because Kyle Schwarber, again, he screams the kind of guy that's going to really make a fuss about the fact that he's not hitting leadoff. And I warn you, you might hear my dog eating in the background because, as is per usual, my dog was sitting down. And as soon as I start the video, he decides, I'm just going to get up and mill around and make a bunch of noise. But the Phillies' problems offensively are real in terms of, and Corey Seidman tweeted this out from PHLY, they right now don't have anybody other than Harper, Schwarber, and maybe Turner that are set to hit 20 home runs, that are on pace to hit 20 home runs. Their power numbers are bad. And when you look at who they have around, it's Alec Bohm, he's always been a stretch to hit 20. If he hits 20, great. If he hits 25, stellar season. Bryson Stott, I think they've always hoped would hit 20. Same kind of thing with Alec Bohm. That's not really his game, though. His game is to get on base, steal bags, and work good counts and all that. Center field, Justin Crawford will be lucky to hit 4. And I think we all knew that going in. Brandon Marsh, 16, 20 is probably the peak. He's having a really good year, though. And then Adolis Garcia was the linchpin. Adolis Garcia was the guy that, look, Kevin Long can get him, and, they can turn him around to what he was in Texas a couple years ago, and it's not happening. So now you have an offense that is anemic to the long ball. Because if it's not Schwarber and it's not Harper, who's doing it? Now, once again, yeah, you'll have someone, pitch in here and there, but for the most part, that is an issue. They don't have power. And if you don't have power, that takes away the chance of the 2-run, 3-run grand slam. Now you're relying on small ball. You're relying on the singles and the doubles, and you can win games like that, no doubt. But the big blow will probably not happen once you get past Harper in the 3-hole. So why are you moving your leadoff hitter up? Why are you guaranteeing that one at-bat per game he is going to start off with the bases completely empty? And don't give me this bullshit of we like starting the game off 1-0. I feel like a broken record. That's cool. You know what else is cool? Starting the game off 3-0. Starting the game off 4-0. You have hitters that their whole model is to hit at the top of the order. You have guys that are set to hit at the top of the order. That is what they're probably best at. And I'm not begging to move Justin Crawford to the leadoff spot, but, and he's a rookie, so, okay, fine. But, I would have no problem if Bryson Stott moved up to the leadoff spot maybe to spark him. Because at worst, Bryson Stott will at least give you really, really good at-bats, and he'll up the pitch count. But to move Kyle Schwarber, again, up to the leadoff spot, is asinine. And the issue is it's working, so they're going to continue to do it. When you look at Kyle Schwarber's numbers, when they moved him out of the leadoff spot and into the 2-hole last year, you saw an MVP-type season. That's not to say that Kyle Schwarber wasn't a really, really good player before. We're splitting hairs here. You're going from 45 and 48 home runs to 56. But you saw a change. You also saw a change with the number of RBIs he hit in. And I know this is going to sound, sacrilegious to the sabermetrics crowd. Runs win games. Runs are actually important. And if you have a guy that can drive in runs, that's kind of important. And if Kyle Schwarber can drive in runs, which he can because he can hit the long ball, and if you want, you can have Kyle Schwarber hit 2, hit 3, hit 4, and then, you move Bryce Harper behind him or in front or whatever. But to have him move up is not the answer. It is not the answer at all. And the real question is okay, well, we're moving Kyle Schwarber up to fix an offense that is struggling big time. The numbers are unkind to the Phillies. I'm not worried about it, but it's the fact. At what point are you going to fix the real problem, which is Kevin Long? The hitting coach that has been here for how many years, and we seem to deal with the same problems. At what point are you going to do that? Because I'll tell you what they're not going to do. Dave Dombrowski is not going to admit, I once again messed up, and I once again went bargain bin hunting, and I got Adolis Garcia, and it didn't work. Just like it didn't work the year before with Max Kepler. And I had to go get Max Kepler because my 5-year deal with Nick Castellanos wasn't really working either. So he's not going to fix that. Because fixing it and going out and getting a legitimate right fielder who can hit and can field, that would be admitting you have a problem. A self-inflicted problem that you had 2 years in a row, and I'd argue with like 4 years in a row. But last year he fixed his self-inflicted problem by going out and getting Johan Duran at the deadline. Johan Duran at the deadline was only because, and this is a fact at this point, it is only because Jose Alvarado was suspended. And because when Jose Alvarado went down, that created such an unbelievable hole in your bullpen that you had to go out. But if Jose Alvarado never gets suspended, they don't get Johan Duran. They don't get a legitimate closer. And once again, you're going with bullpen by committee. Jordan Romano ends up getting trotted out there to give up, 2 runs an inning. He finishes the season with a 9 ERA or whatever it was. And somehow that bargain bin hunting ends up staying on the roster because, again, Dave Dombrowski does not want to admit, I messed up. So he's not going to go out and he's not going to fix the right field issue. What does he do? Probably nothing, which means that you have to fix the lineup, and by moving Kyle Schwarber up, that ain't doing it. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comment section. As far as comments go, I'm only going to respond to channel members, so become a channel member, support the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this, smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked, and subscribe. Subscribing is cool. Okay, go Phillies.